Do you feel like going into parenting conscious is potentially harder in some ways than it is to go into parenting unconscious?
There goes a sight from my soul.
Welcome to the Inspired Evolution. It is such a treat to be here today. We have with us Natasha Mason. Natasha, how are you?
Hello, Amrit. So good. And I love that intro. It just like lifted me up out of my seat a little bit further. Like, wow,
The thing is, in
that
Melbourne,
was
we love our
unexpected.
coffee.
I love
Yeah, in
that.
Melbourne, we love our coffee. So that's hopefully a substitute for your morning coffee.
I haven't had actually, I'm off coffee at the moment, mate. So
Yeah,
it's okay,
there you
I've got a
go.
substitute. But yes, I do
You're
love
welcome.
coffee, but I don't rely on it. So that's the important point.
Yeah.
But do love good coffee. Yeah.
Awesome. So, for those tuning into Natasha for the first time, grab a seat, let's sit down, let's have this chat. She's a mother, she's an entrepreneur, she's a passionate meditator. Can't wait to dive deeper into that. She's an advocate of self care, like a massive advocate for self care, especially here in Melbourne. She's doing a lot with Nourish Melbourne and cultivating a community in that space. She's an educator, healer, and a creator. And alongside her role as the founder and director of Nourish Melbourne, she's a meditation teacher, which she dives into this effortless being meditation technique. She's an Ayurvedic postpartum doula. She's a women's circle facilitator at the Fifth Direction and a Reiki healer. Natasha, there is so much in there that we can cover. It is such a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
I guess
Mm.
the place I'd love to start is to sort of ask the question around there's a lot in your offerings that is around well-being and wellness and supporting others on their journey. Um, what if I was to look back into your life's journey, like what would be the context that sort of brought this to the fore? Like, what was it about your life that has made you such a massive advocate for well-being? And I'm thinking like early days, right? Like earlier than even teenager. Like, where did this archetype or this makeup of Natasha come about in your journey, in your story?
It's a good question, and I think you've hit you've hit a spot.
Hmm.
It's a great question. So growing up,
Hmm.
and well, for as long as I know, do you know, I don't even know when, but my dad was a type 2 diabetic.
Hmm.
But from as long as and as far back as I remember, so let's call that 4 or 5, whenever it is, he did have that type 2 diabetes and took immaculate care of his diet and, care of, as you might know, type 2 diabetics need to take care of their feet, especially. He was always onto me, brushing teeth, keeping teeth clean, flossing, all of this. And then, a few years later, at the age of 8, when I was 8, my mum was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Hmm.
And so for me, growing up, I was surrounded by, well, my parents, being, I guess, consumed by, I guess, their physical illness,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, and more to that being that with my mother's illness and the age at which I was at and then her, being diagnosed with MS,
Hmm.
emotionally, and this is something I learned recently, she had to kind of turn that attention back to her, that
Hmm.
emotional support as an 8-year-old. Now, especially, you might know, we kind of move as human beings through 7-year cycles, so 1
Hmm.
to 7. So around the age of 8, we're growing up that little bit more, and while we're looking out to peers and that external world outside of the house for support, we still need, mother and father, right? But at that point, my mother was dealing with, you've got this incurable disease,
Hmm.
and I lost that female, I guess, support from a woman that a
Hmm.
young girl needs growing up. And it was that point where it shifted gears and I had to grow up very quickly. So there's the aspect of the physical well-being, knowing that and witnessing both my parents and as I got older into teenage years, declining in health. My mum's MS was that slow progressive type. So it was over, let's call it 28 years it was that her MS, slowly deteriorated her physical body. And so, for me, that, the keeping the physical, this is where it started, all on physical aspect, the physical level. I saw that because of that, and they couldn't be there for me or at different school events or sporting events. What I had was an older brother and sister, much older than me, 15 and 18 years older than me, they are.
Yeah.
And they were the ones who, my sister went off and got married though. So I also kind of lost her in a way that, and yeah, while I had my older brother was still around in the home, there was that kind of searching also. Now looking back, I see this, while the physical was so important to me, like, I see where our health is our wealth type message. I just wanted that peace, in our home. I knew intuitively, not at the time. Now I knew just, things were not great, and we're going to go downhill. Which they did. And so I've grown up witnessing that. That was my exposure to and now I know it's full circle how our health and well-being physically and emotionally, spiritually, mentally is crucial for a life that we can thrive in. But again, it started as a young adult and a late teen young adult, that it was for me still quite two-dimensional, just its body, its movement. And then, through unpacking that, I was like, the mind is so powerful. And now looking back going, wow, look at the emotions and the feelings I knew my mother carried. And we know that, disease has a metaphysical aspect. It's not just, even if you look at something like smoking and lung cancer, there's actually very little to say that smoking causes lung cancer. It can assist, but there are specific emotions and events, especially in our early life, that can determine, when the body ends up manifesting something like lung cancer. So a great book, I'm not sure if you've read it, but When the Body Says No by Dr. Gabor Mate. So
It's on my list to read. Yeah, right.
Trauma healer. He dives into all of this, a lot of case studies, about really digging, this person with this, was it, maybe they don't even smoke. So I was like, why, and then you get to this age of 30, or after the birth of my first daughter, I was 29, almost 30. And there's something more, so really so from that far back, this is where it started for me, and it probably started more as a fear-based motivation, that if I didn't keep myself well, I would get sick too, because no one wants to get ill. I don't think anyone out there listening, whether how much you do on your day-to-day basis to take care of yourself, I don't think anyone chooses that. But so it started off in that kind of, like, I don't want to be like that, because I can see what's happening, right? I was witnessing that with my own eyes, and it was very sad. And I'm still like clearing that sadness, carrying that sadness. So that's, in a roundabout way, I've come full circle in your question is, that's where it started, from anywhere from age 5, but particularly around 7, 8. In that next stage of my next 7-year cycle of life.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. speaks volumes to your self-awareness. The depth with which you were able to answer that, I truly appreciate it. And they say, yeah, you know, the health is the crown on the healthy person's head that only the sick person can see, you know. And yeah, that really was ringing, echoing in my head as you were sharing. Yeah, must have been so challenging to yeah, just to watch your providers, you know, learning to provide for themselves, and then fill up their own cup, and then trying to give to you from that space. I guess the 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 next sort of space for me to sort of unpick was because you mentioned it started with your body, and I can totally see, with the type 2 diabetes, and then the MS, and MS is such a thing that it's very body centric. What sort of what was that? What was that moment that went from like, oh, the mind, like, what was it that went like, oh, like, oh, but the mind also, like, because I know, like, now, we're both in the wellness space, and we're both avid meditators. So I've been guilty. People got toe aches, and I'm like, have you tried meditating? I've been that guy, so I'm conscious. But what made the jump from like physical to the mental manifestation of things? What was that moment for you?
Well, see, now I can say, and I gave you that past answer, oh, it's retrospective, and like I said, it started when, when I started Nourish Melbourne, I would say, and that was 10 years ago, actually. 10 years, wow. There was still for me much of focus around, body, food. I was very consumed by just what you eat, just like that's it. But then through my work with Nourish Melbourne, I met, obviously, meditation teachers, or then I met the founders of One Giant Mind, and we did work together. And I was like, oh, meditation. I also actually spent some time working with Smiling Mind, the app for children for meditation, when they launched, and assisted them with that launch. And so I was like, okay, meditation. Had never done any, and then that interest, that kind of seed starts to like, drop into your fertile ground,
Germinate,
growing and germinate. And it's like, this meditation thing, okay, I know it up here. I see people talking about it. There's these amazing people launching an app. There's this other app you can use, great. And then there's 30-day challenges, great, give that a go. Was not very successful. So it was the process of that germinating, and then a point, obviously, it always hits, personally. There's a point at which someone, I see this now in students, but I know it was for me. You go, it's not just you want to learn to meditate, but it was the point at which I'm like, there is something more to life than what I'm experiencing right now. There is something more. How do I? That was it. That was the question. There's something more. And it was, even then, it was fully intuitive that I was like, right, I must learn with a teacher. No more apps, no more trying to do these challenges on my own. I need to understand the mechanics of the mind, of stress. I went and learned, and have never missed a day of meditation since. And that's nearly 7 years ago.
Yeah, twice a day.
It is my bread and butter. It is the non-negotiable. It is the only thing, if anything else doesn't get done in the days I'm sick, unwell, that the meditation always. But that's where that part of me started unfolding. And then from there came, right, you start meditating, and all this stress and fatigue starts leaving the body, and you're revealing all of, the crap in order to heal. We're just revealing it. And that's how, through good rest. And then you start to witness a lot more. Your awareness, as just
Mm.
And then, of course, you go, oh, what else is there? And it sounds like it's a little bit some kind of addiction, but if you're going to call it an addiction, well, it's the best kind. What else? Okay, right. And then you start to learn about energetics and the body. And then I learned about Reiki, emotions, childhood. Well, not that I wouldn't say I had trauma, but inner child work. What does that mean? So looking at all these different avenues
Yeah.
and meeting healers and going, wow, and then learning more about myself and why I behave, my behaviors, where they came from, unpacking that with others. And so that's when it started, when I had a moment of there's something more. Plus, I actually had what I felt was anxiety at the time. My first was nearly 6 months old, but yeah, the shift, the postpartum shift, and then here we are now. I'm a postpartum doula.
Yeah.
Yeah, it threw me. While I thought, yes, on the outside, yeah, I looked in control, and I think we were, but it is a huge transition. More so emotionally and mentally, it was what I didn't address. Again,
Yep.
physically, I was doing well. My body was strong. I had birth naturally the way I wanted, all of that, but no one talked to me about what birth means on a spiritual and mental emotional level. And it's a rebirth of the mother and the parents as well. So going through some anxiety on that physical aspect that contributed, but that's where, like, right, the mind, we need to go there. And so I did. And I say the reason I chose to meditate and learn to meditate then is not the reason I keep doing it today. It's very different. My motivations are, and they'll keep evolving. They'll keep evolving and changing.
I love that. What are your motivations for meditation today?
It's just being more of what I truly am, the what I truly am. I want to bring more of that to the world. So for that reason, I meditate. Because when we meditate, we make contact with that beautiful part of our being, and the more we do that, the more we can bring awareness to all of these, our crazy 2022 and beyond life. That's just, who knows what's coming. We don't know.
No.
Surrender to soften. But in that softening, there's a strengthening. I feel my most strong, not just physically, mentally, but mentally, and knowing what I am. I don't need anyone else to tell me. I don't need any external validation. I know that, I meditate also for that intuitive perception in me to keep informing me of what I need to do next. And that's why I became a meditation teacher. I never had planned that. Nature moved me there. You must teach others. And yeah, I've pretty much taught women. Out of the nearly 90 or so students I've taught, I think only 2 have been male, maybe 3 actually, sorry, 3. And I feel that's my path, having witnessed where, what led to, I can have my opinion or belief, but, my mum and what she went through and being entrapped in her body, like you said, this is a physical disease. I want more women to know, this innate power that they have and this ability that, we have to change the world together, and shame, guilt are not part of that. And stress shouldn't be part of it. So this is why. So that moved me to meditation. Obviously, again, doula work. Didn't plan on doing that. It was nature going and enlivening within me. Oh, this is where you need to go next. That voice, that intuitive voice, that wisdom bubbling up, and that's it. So there I am. and I've made myself available to, you know, those who seek me out. I'll be there to help.
Does it yeah, your relationship with Nourish Melbourne, like you going along on the physical journey of on the journey of you know, unpacking physical health and wellness, and then creating community around that, and then it opening up your next chapter for like meditation for you, like, you know, it's like you create something and then it holds space for you to open up into something, and then you obviously open deeper into that, and it's like, you know, it's almost like the energetics of like, you know, you've created something, but it's also like something that is not, because oftentimes when in the 3D we look at the, oh, I created that and it's my thing. But in the
Yeah,
energetics of things now, you know, especially in this conversation with the awareness that you and I carry, like obviously when we create something, it's got its own entity in many ways, right? It's like I feel that with Inspired Evolution, you know, sometimes like I'll get the guest on and it'll be like, whoa, like that was exactly the thing that I needed to unlock the next like 6 months of my like journey. Like, what is
yeah, you
going on?
go.
You know, totally
Wow.
trips me out. Does that, yeah, with Nourish Melbourne, your relationship with that as like kind of like you creating something, but it also creating you in the process, that ontology, like, can you, like, does that buzz you out? Is it, yeah, can you tell us a
Oh,
little bit
it
about
does
that?
buzz me out. My head's going, oh, yes, because
Mm,
as you know, being an entrepreneur and going out and going, right, I'm going to create this, you know, these things we create, they are extensions of ourselves. This is our hearts on our plate, you know,
mm.
work is love made visible.
Khalil Gibran.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, you know that one?
He's my
Yeah,
favorite.
I
Yeah.
just I just shared that the other day on
Mm,
Instagram. Work is love made visible from
mhm.
Khalil Gibran
Yeah.
in The Prophet. So, you know, and with that, and as your awareness changes, yes, so does this thing, this entity, like you said, you've birthed into the world. You know,
Mhm.
now I'm sitting here, actually, even just yesterday, I was like, gosh, 10 years since I, you know, left my old desk job and just
Mhm.
started thinking I was Nourish Melbourne. Cool, that sounds good.
Yeah.
um, and then to think today, you know, it is, you know, we are driven around, you know, this message of self-care is so important. You know, if we don't choose to care for ourselves, no one else will. And self-care and what we need on any day looks different. So it's not just this one way of eating. You know,
Yeah.
I'm as I've softened, like I said, you know,
Mm.
understanding this flow, what you need on a day, even what you eat on a day. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be the same and so structured. Listen to your body.
Mm.
Know, get the help you need. There's so many, and this is why we share these beautiful healers or services that we love to recommend through
Mm.
Nourish Melbourne. You know, yeah, look after yourself. You know, but yeah, like I just said, what we need on any given day changes.
Mm.
Not
Can we
robots.
can we do a neat little plug in there for those tuning in? What is Nourish Melbourne? Just really quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're a community, we've got a membership offering, and we're a
Mm.
holistic health wellness community of, you know, of trusted services and products that we
Mhm.
share on our website. We share wellbeing content knowledge. We've now got a podcast called The
Yo.
Agents of Wellness.
Yeah.
We run beautiful events now that have started back in person, that we're
Mm.
focusing more on that experiential type event. You know, gone are the
Mhm.
days of seminars, because now we can do that online and share
Mm.
that knowledge that way, but community getting together. And yeah, we have these wonderful local businesses in Melbourne who are part of our community and offer, you know, their member rates to our members. So if you're a member
Mm.
of Nourish Melbourne, you know, receive extra benefits when you visit these places. So
Yeah.
yeah, we like to consider ourselves as, you know, a well-being guide, you know, to
Mm.
elevate your self-care and just be curious and have fun.
Yeah,
You know,
that's the vibe I always got from it as
and
well. It was like
enjoy.
the,
Fun
oh,
and
sorry.
enjoy. Yeah,
Yeah.
have fun and enjoy.
Yeah, the vibe I got from it was like the good food guide for all things wellness. You
Yes, yes.
know?
And like a
Yeah.
little bit RACV because you get your membership and your
Yeah.
discount. So, but that's almost coming second rate as the more I speak to members, they enjoy being part of that community because they get, even if it's just knowing who to go to
Yeah, the
above and
endorsements,
beyond
the
the monetary discount, it's like, oh, I know I can trust, and
trust.
we really meet these people and see that they align with what we're sharing. Because if it
Mm.
doesn't work, then like any relationship, it's not going to be nourished and well fed. So we make sure we align with everyone, and we would 100% recommend,
There's the and again, there's I want to ask this question in terms of masculine and feminine, knowing that, not necessarily masculine means male and feminine means female, but the masculine and the feminine in the current world that we live in, driven by what I perceive, and this may just be my humble witnessing, of more of a masculine world where we're so caught up in the doing of things. We've got to do this and got to do that and got to do this. Especially the type of meditation that you invite us into, what Nourish Melbourne invites us into, this more feminine way of being,
Mm.
to be. Can you unpack sort of, well, before I even ask my question, I sort of, one of the observations I see, even in, even women becoming more empowered these days in many ways, I see women sort of falling into, okay, now I've got to do like men do, and then like sort of chasing into that male archetype, into the doingness. Um, can you explain your relationship? Like you described meditation and, how it's inviting you to be even more parts of you. Can you help us sort of navigate how important that being aspect is and what your vision for being is, what your vision for women is? Like, what is your relationship with being and what's possible for, the sort of shift and transition that I think we're going through right now as well, is to bring more of that balance between doing and being.
Yes.
Is that, what is your
Mm.
awareness and what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, being for me, is the truest part of what we are. And it's my belief that every single human being, it's not here by accident. We are here to do amazing things in many various ways. Success to one person compared to another can be very different. But this is why it's important to be more established in our being, because nature's intelligence brought us here, and they want, nature's intelligence wants us to have the best possible experience of life. Suffering shouldn't be even part of our vocabulary. Suffering is what I feel, again, what I watched, more so my mother than father, but go through, you know. Suffering is an ignoring of what we truly are. And the way we ignore is through, these addictions to external things, like I've got to
Incessant
look
doing.
doing, yeah, I've got to look a certain way, I've got to do all these things, I've got to have a child and be back working in 3 months and whatever, and like start 3 businesses and da 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 da. Let's just like call bullshit on all of that, because we can see where that's going. And especially women, but human beings are the most stressed out they've ever been because of those demands. And you know what? Those demands come from the outside. There's nothing inside that actually makes you stressed and, so far from what you actually are. This, everything that, well, what I should say is that it's, what's on our state of nervous system is the way we, react to those demands. But because there are so many demands, like those demands to, especially for women, looking a certain way, doing it all. I'm saying quote marks because what is doing it all?
Mm.
Um, there's such demand, and with that, inability to properly rest, there's a reaction in the nervous system. And this is where we, those biological fear impulses of our body take over. And this is not what we need in the world right now. We need more people, whether you are, if we're going to talk, genders, whatever you are, all human beings, need to find a way to eliminate this stress and fatigue from their body, because it's impacting and getting in the way of what you truly are. So this is what being is, it's making space in your day to make contact with that, so that we can bring more of that into the world, because this is what we're here for. Not sit like, I think we spoke about, I can't remember if we were recording or not, but is it, do we just grow up, go to school, university, get this job, work like a, robot, right? Go in Monday, Friday, work 9 to 5, 6 to 6, whatever it is. Go home for a little bit on the weekend and then do it all again. And then when you retire, you've got your walking stick or whatever it is, however old you are, and then, oh, now you can travel the world, and you can't do that. Well, who made that up, actually? Who even made that up?
Yeah.
Again, this is someone else's idea of how we should live. No. How about we get to know ourselves a bit more, who we really are, what lights us up, and start doing more of that. And so for anyone listening and watching, it's, even if you are in that, you say, well, I've got to work to make this money to pay for my mortgage, and yeah, I get that, but it doesn't mean you can't start being that which you wish to cultivate, whether that's in your weekends, you start creating and doing more of that, or, learning, signing up for a course that is aligned with what you want to do. So that's, for me, being. It does kind of lend itself to doing as well, but what ends up happening is you're doing in a much more effortless and seamless manner. Flow. And what you do and where you place your attention on is so sacred and special, and no time is wasted. We're not doing just to show, and it comes from the inside. It's not, I've got to look like I'm doing all these things. It's and this is why I look at my life now, I'm like, geez, okay, I've got meditation teaching, Nourish Melbourne, being open to helping postpartum mothers. Gosh, it's a lot. And being a mother myself, and you layer,
there's a full-time
right?
thing in its own, bro.
That's a lot. And then you meet people with various awareness levels and go, oh wow, geez, you've got your finger in a lot of pies. Maybe it looks like that, but I purely go to where my heart has led me, and that's through bringing that awareness to my being. So I don't ever feel like I work. I am being, even when I am doing. But in a way, we're doing less and achieving more.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Trippy next question. Hopefully you're okay with me asking it. From the outside looking in and listening to that response, I get the impression that your mission is to like down-regulate all of our stress levels. And then from that coherence, we can all just ripple into greater peace. And I love it. That's my little awareness light that just boop, went on. But the question, rather than my little Amrit remarks, part of that is actually, I'm going to ask it this way: is what is your prayer for womankind?
Just love yourself so the next generation can love themselves more. Whatever you're doing now is your legacy for the generation to come. in the Western world, we don't really tend to think like that. We tend to think now. But know that everything you're doing is your kind of vote in the way you wish to see the world when your body is no longer here. But if you've got children, or even if you don't, because all children are the world's children, so whether you've given birth or parent them yourself, doesn't matter. That everything you do, love yourself so that they too will love themselves. Because someone who truly understands what self-love is, how can they ever be depressed, anxious, sad, worried, fearful, all these things that are just rampant now, and all the things that stop us from being what we truly are. Just know you're worthy of you are worthy of the best. And maybe I can find the quote while I'm talking to you on my phone. I think I've saved it on my notes. Let me see if it is there. I hope it is. Otherwise, it might be something to add to your no, I do. I have saved it because I come to it. It's a quote from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Now, for those who don't know Maharishi, the word Maharishi, Maha means great. This is the Sanskrit language. My personal practice is in Vedic meditation. So I love the Vedic culture and knowledge and wisdom. Rishi, seer, great seer. And Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was made famous as teacher of the Beatles. And listeners might, know that the Beatles spent some time in India in the ashram.
Yes,
and
that's where I know him from.
One of their albums. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was their guru, their teacher. And he was also responsible for bringing meditation, this type of transcending meditation, to the West.
To the West, yeah.
But this quote, one of my favorites, so I'm going to read it because it echoes what I've just said. Never be afraid to expect the best. Never feel you are unworthy or not justified in having the best. I tell you, this is your heritage, but you have to claim it. You have to accept it and expect it. To do so is not demanding too much. You have to claim it. Don't sit back and wait for this to fall in your lap. Go out there and know that you expect a life that is full of joy. And even, things will happen. I've witnessed both my parents pass from this life. They're no longer here. But with awareness, even when stuff like that happens, we trust in the process and then know even more why we're here and what is my role now. I know it was no accident because my mum was 41 and thought she was halfway through menopause or perimenopausal when she had me, and she had a 15-year-old and 17-year-old. I know I'm no accident. People go, oh, wow, you have an older brother and sister. And then you came along. No, I know what I'm here to do. And my wish is that more people will go and find that.
Yeah.
Know that they should accept that they are worthy of having the best.
I'm going to take a leap of faith and trust that it's okay for me to ask this from a very privileged place where, touch wood, both my parents are still alive. What did you see transition within yourself largely when both your parents passed on, like the shifts that happened within you? And I don't even know how to ask the question because I'm so privileged, touch wood, at this particular point in my life.
Yeah. I think when my dad passed 5 years ago, I think it's interesting also with, not like you can compare father to mother, but obviously there's a relationship with father, one with mother. And because when, I guess, my dad passed, my mum was still here. And, you know, personally, it was, you know, just a time to know that, you know, what I'm doing. Well, he didn't really understand what I was doing at the time, you know, with his concept of, he's like, oh no, yeah, like you nutritionist or something. Like, no, no, no. No, this old school Greek parents, right? Like, no, we're, you know, we're sharing all this knowledge to help others, you know, live well. And but in terms of my, I guess because my awareness was very, very different between my dad passing and my mum, which was actually almost a year to the day coming up. You know, but when my mother passed, that's where it's almost like this. It was like a package of grief arrived because it was, you no longer have either your parent, both parents.
Yeah.
There's no one. It's like, this is you now, and you have your kids, and it's like, right, you're like next in this. You know, pecking order that, you know, it's just this cycle, right? You go, wow, gosh, now literally I don't have either parent here. And with my mum, because it was that, what happened was, I feel like, and it's still coming out, it's a lot of sadness, because watching the way that, you know, my dad's illness developed compared to my mum's, where it was, you know, having to watch her be almost wheelchair bound for the last 8 years, and then in a bed for the last year. That was very sad, you know, and it just kept reminding me. And, you know, when she passed, not only did my appreciation of, you know, witnessing death, because I did, you know, with my father we didn't, but with my mother we were there when she passed. And it's very sacred. I almost feel very grateful that we were there with her, you know. And what happened is, you just get your appreciation of waking up every day and, you know, going to swim in the ocean or sitting in the sun on a beautiful day. It just goes to the next level, you know, your appreciation for what, you know, is here right now. And all those still, yeah, I can't sit here and say I have no worries. These little things pop into your head like, oh, about that, but they don't consume me. They don't take up much of my time. And so when you have witnessed that, and you know, you've literally seen death happen, and again in the West, another thing we're not comfortable with is death. But to know this is such an important part of life, you know, it's so important. And you know, our children need to see it more. You know, that's why I took my children there to see her. And yeah, it can be, they even used to find it confronting when, you know, just going, because my mum was in an aged care home for the last 8 years, and yeah, they find it like, oh, it's a little bit uncomfortable, like they don't know what's going on. Again, you know, children need to know, you know, and be more exposed to death, you know, to see that whenever it is end of life for someone, and understand that this is part of living, you know, to not run away from it. And we recently did the same with visiting my husband's grandmother when she was in her last few days, and the kids were there. And it's funny, kids will often just be their usual self, right? Because they don't have these, they haven't yet grown
Baggage,
up to have
they don't have the
these
baggage
external
attached to
like messaging
stories.
about death. And okay, we know this 90-year-old woman's about to pass, but they're just being their self around her, you know, being happy. And yeah, and just to know that they were there. And this makes also that time for anyone, you know, passing on a little bit more comfortable, I think. But yeah, we need to, us here living right now, need to get more comfortable with that.
Mm. Thank you so much for answering the question, and yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I from death to birth, you mentioned earlier that, you know, when the babies are born, it's like a new rebirth for the parents as well. I found
Yeah.
myself saying that at some point because I couldn't recognize myself. Still can.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by that, please?
Yeah. Wow. Especially, you know, I speak to, let's start with mother, but I say when a baby is born, so too is a mother. But I believe the father is too. But what happens is the relationship dynamics do change. And you'll often notice, and I'm sure you experience this, is that the relationship strengthens something that in a way that you can't describe to someone else.
Hmm.
But yes, everything, every way of being that preceded that point to up until that child being born into the world, you can't imagine what life was like, right? Before having your child.
Hmm.
And now they're here and you go, what was my day like when I didn't have children? I had so much more spare time. Not really, but this is what I mean. You think, what did I used to do? Yeah.
Hmm.
God, how was I not more productive?
Yeah.
But yeah, when a child is born, so too is a mother, so too is a father, obviously.
Hmm.
But every part of, you know, what we've known ourselves to be in a very quick moment is transformed. It's almost, you know, a death in a way
Hmm.
of that old self. And there's a complete new being here. And now, as you know, when a baby is born, now let's look at the baby. Now they're dependent on us 24/7.
Hmm.
Milk, 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 change, milk, 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 bath. They are
Hmm.
held. That they are taking so much of the soma
Hmm.
from us. But you think if we're being born as well, who is looking after us?
Hmm.
Who's taking care of our well-being? Who is checking in on us? Who is coming to make sure we know that we're okay and we're doing well? Who's feeding us? You know, we need to ask these questions because there's so much focus on up until birth and all the crap that you need, and really you don't need anything except for the mother's boobs, really.
Hmm.
And or whatever, you know, the other feeding option is, but that's it, right?
Hmm.
There's so much out there, and this is where you see this now, where we're going technologically and with, you know, our, you know, new creations. You need this, you need that, and every year I see so many new things, even that I didn't have 7 years ago. Hilarious. Like, you think, wow, what are they gonna make next? You can now
Yeah.
breast pump while you're at the footy. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh, like that's just what? What on earth? You're like,
Yeah.
hang on, let's just scale it back a bit
Hmm.
and come back to, yeah, baby's been born. And yes, the baby's being cared for. Baby, yep, and this is why doulas now are in such or much higher demand, because like I said, of those demands on women and new mothers to be a certain way. And then
Hmm.
you get to the other side where that baby's born, and it can be really rough.
Mm-hmm.
Be a rough transition. Now, first and foremost to that, I say, if anyone, you know, please learn a way to, you know, just get your nervous system into that rest and digest phase more and more in whatever way suits you
Hmm.
before having a baby, because that's the first point of, it's just that planning, like you say, prevention is, let's build and lay the fertile ground so that we have strong foundations, so that when times are tough, when we're sleep deprived, and that we have this extra little bit of resilience. But really, like I said, then we have parents, but who's looking after them? And they say, there's a saying, I'll just mention this, that the first 40 days will determine the next 40 years of a woman's life, especially in terms of their well-being and how well they are nourished and cared for after baby is born.
There's
it really does. So it's not just an investment on, okay, it's nice to get someone in and care for you for a few weeks or whatever. That point will translate to how that mother not only relates with child, but to herself, her well-being for many, many years to come.
And I find, at the risk of sounding like a victim, I find myself saying that the nuclear family setup that we've got, when the age-old saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child, and I look at our living compartmentalized into these boxes, with, like my heritage being Indian, we live with at least 3, even now, like there's 3 tiers of family that live in the same. So grandparents live with the parents, they live with all the children, which is amazing fun, by the way, because you got grandparents and they have like massive families. So my mum's one of 8, so they got like at least 3 brothers. Touch wood, like unfortunately one passed away. They all had 2 kids. You're growing up around 6 kids at the ages, like you got half a cricket team hanging out with you. Do you know what I mean? Like you go with the neighbors, you guys can play a game, with the guys across the street. So that to sort of say, I find myself harboring the awareness that trying to, and we come back to that being versus doing, trying to do it all as, a male and a female and it's like this little, and I don't want to call it a big T trauma, but it's a little T trauma. It's kind of, and again, at the risk of sounding, I feel like it's got these little T traumas. It's like, I need to go out for a night to just spend, like, connect with my wife. It's like, what can, like, where's my village? Like, where's just someone, like, I just need 2 hours, like, and it's this really interesting journey, because then you start looking at yourself, okay, so what's been birthed along, with the baby? It's like, your responsibilities and, like, and then where do you find yourself in and around all of that? It's this really epic journey. One of my questions, which I had to ask you today, was, do you feel like going into parenting conscious is potentially harder in some ways than it is to go into parenting unconscious? And I know unconscious sounds a bit loaded, but maybe you get the drift of my question.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's harder.
But you did pause to think, which can which said a lot in itself.
No, I don't think it's harder because I can compare my first time. I wasn't a meditator. I didn't have that part of my life, again, just going through, like, I just followed what others did. That's how you give birth, who you choose, what you buy. You have all these types of celebrations like baby showers and that, where you just sit and open presents for an hour in front of other people. Like I look back on that now, how weird is that? How weird is that? Like, but at the time, because I was that, let's just say, very different, not unaware and not unconscious, but not aware to the degree I am now. But being aware, it's like you have your cycle of being able to digest all the demands and whatever's going on. It's very quick, like I didn't realize that really in my first birth, I did have because of what I realized was kind of birth trauma, even though on paper, it was natural and, I didn't want drugs, didn't have them, great. But the way it played out and the scenario, I was like, oh, I wasn't empowered in that, but I didn't realize because I was not conscious at the time. To me, it was, oh, okay, I had a natural birth on paper. But and then a year and a half, again, I had started meditating, and then I go, oh, okay, maybe this is actually, that experience is still in my body. So as that awareness is growing, getting more conscious and aware, go, oh, well, I know I need to clear this before I have another child. So I wouldn't say, you can say I wouldn't say harder, but because you're more aware, you will make more, I guess, decisions to support the best experience possible. Whereas in the unconscious, I'll say unconscious, but not so aware state, you just go through, kind of, the process like everyone seems to. And while, you don't know what you haven't been able to access, it makes it harder later on. Makes it harder later on in a more destructive way, not in the way that I say, okay, I started meditating, then realized, oh, okay, that wasn't such a great experience, actually. That wasn't a destructive point in my life. But when I say we're unaware, this is when we go through to then our midlife and whatnot. And especially for women, we go through menopause, and this is where that time of the life can, make itself known. That's where that rocky road of that time of life in a woman's life can be very uncomfortable, when it should be smooth and seamless. So I wouldn't say harder, but it's more that, your knowledge, gives you this scope to choose.
I love that. And totally agree. Some part of me is aware that, when I say harder for me, I found that I'm aware of certain things, and especially the mirroring and the modeling. It's like the self-awareness and going, this little dude's not going to do anything I say. He's just going to do what I do. And that piece is like, yeah, and I'm a total monkey, right? So, and then going, do I want another monkey around? It's like, holy cow, what have we got
and again,
into here?
Isn't this an example of why? You know what? They don't learn by, it's if we're in our being, and then obviously what's coming through that is what we're doing, where we choose to place our attention. That is what the child is watching and absorbing, right? That's why it's important.
Yeah. And it gives a whole nother layer of, impetus to, air quotes, do the work, I find, because you realize that that's what you're cultivating in what's next in life, in the next generation. And you realize that, you are, I found the awareness of like, need a better way to say this, but the world's not mine, it's like, yes, totally, like, she's my Mother Earth. But at the same time, it's like, actually, I'm just custodianshipping for the next generation, and they're inheriting this. And then, our responsibility as kind of elders in some ways is to, hopefully cultivate a relationship where, they are aware and, they can model, like love. And I think it comes full circle to what you described before as your prayer for, self-love for mothers. And I remember as you were sharing, one of the things that was, just really echoing for me was even just witnessing like a woman's body, and just like when she is loving herself, and just kind of what that seed is growing in, and it's such a miracle, man. Like women's bodies,
doesn't
like
that blow your mind? It's still
right. It's not even. It's beyond the mind. Like, I watched my wife give birth, and it's just like,
that's it. I'm done. I just don't know how I can function anymore. Yeah, right. And this is why it's such a pleasure to be around that new life now, and yeah, it's, and it is my plan to eventually, be part of births and doula in
Mm.
that way, when my children are older, because yeah, that's a, yeah, it's transformational, cosmic, I don't know, just everything, think of all the most cosmic words you can. That's what it is. It's
Yeah, it's a miracle.
the and they're the moments we go, wow, look what we are capable of, you know, create life like that, like, and we women birth into, it's just phenomenal.
Mm.
And why
Yeah.
can't we just believe and know that in every day of our life, you know? That's one of the life's biggest reminders, it's there every day. Babies are being born. New life, new life, new life.
I remember asking one very dear friend of mine, Amal, and I have some trippy questions, as you've already noticed in this podcast. And I remember turning around to her and going, "Hey, man, how come men don't give birth?" And she straight up, she didn't even like hesitate. Like it was like she was like waiting for someone to ask her this question her whole life, right? And then she was just like, "You're not strong enough." And I looked at her and the conviction in her eyes, and I was like, "But I'm a man." Like, and it was this. And then I watched my
Oh, that's so
wife give
funny.
birth. I watched my wife give birth, and I was like, "Oh snap!" Like whoa, like there is nothing more humbling as a man than yeah,
Yeah.
actually watching your wife give birth. Especially I think because men, we're so disconnected from rites of passage in our
Yes.
current
That's a
world that we
huge
live in.
point. Yeah.
We just don't have one. Like my 18th, I got shit faced. My
Yeah.
21st, I got absolutely shit faced. And I'm
Yep.
using that word intentionally. I know it's going to trigger some
Again,
people, shit
who
faced, but that's
who
literally what I
decided
did. Like
that
I just
yeah, who
like
decided that was the way we should do it, and then it became the
beat your
popular
liver
thing.
up and you become a man. What? Like that's got, and then you watch a woman give birth, and potentially, and in certain age and era, men weren't allowed near the women when they were birthing. It was a sacred thing for women. But some part of me is grateful that I was so allowed to be part of that process because it was my first hand experience of a rite of passage, if there
Yes.
ever was one. And I realized you haven't been through anything like that, bro. Like you haven't. And I'm grateful that society has provided creature comforts and convenience to such a degree that we can thrive in such a way. But yeah, there is something to be said for the wisdom that my wife now carries. Like you said, it was like instantaneous, the shift that she went through. 1 second she was a girl, the next minute she was a woman.
It's it. Yeah, it's a transformation into a new, rite of passage as a woman into mother. We've gone from
Mm,
maiden to mother
mm,
in a flash. Whereas the other stages, I guess, in a woman's life can be in terms of length of time, a bit
mm.
longer over years. But yeah, that point of birth, that's the fastest one, and it's the most powerful, and it's yeah, for that reason, and that's why it is such a, you often, even as women, you think, well, hang on, if we're made to have babies, and then why can it be, on a physical level, it is one of the hardest things I've done, but the most, every woman will say, the most rewarding,
Mm.
the most empowering, the most fuel giving. This is what then will, give you and inform you as a mother for the rest of, you have to go through that experience to understand, this transformation in your life. And now that you are mother, and that's why it's such a feat, it's not just, you know, I don't know, squat down for a minute and baby pops out easily. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, no, it definitely does not.
It requires inward focus. It requires that trust in body, all these things that then we will carry on, you know. And yeah, and actually when you talk about hope, and wishes for the world that, more ritual. Now that I look back and go, wow, I had to going through getting my period as a 11-year-old with, no one really available. My mum never wanted to talk about it. It was just almost like I hid it and I just dealt with it. I mean, how, again, for women listening, have a think, like, what was your experience like? And you'll see how that has translated into some ways of being emotionally and how you feel in your body. So I now know we have this awareness because we're here to evolve and do things better than, we always bless and thank our parents for this life. But this is what we're here for. So now I've got a daughter. I'm like, right. She watches me. Like, yes, this is something that happens to us once a month. And it's not going to be something that, you'll have to run and hide from and be, afraid of sharing with me, because we will have that relationship before that time comes. And there will be ritual and that will be celebrated, And in the same way, I hope for my son that he is, there are far less, like you say, 18th, 21st, all of that it's just about, drinking yourself to oblivion and not really even remembering it. So, with awareness becomes, life becomes more of a ritual in every way.
Natasha, I feel like I've just scratched the surface. There is the meditation and the Vedic science that informs you. There's Nourish Melbourne and everything you're doing with community and bringing so much to the fore. There's, the Reiki, and then there's, just the postpartum douling and birthing and just, the sacred women's work that you're doing as well. And man, my intention has been to sort of, just at least for people to connect with your being, the essence of sort of, the wise woman that is in there, that is, cultivating and creating from a place of being. And this conversation has meant really a lot to me. So thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you, Amrit. That means a lot to me too. Thank you.
For those tuning in, I'm going to put in the links to the show notes to the podcast that Natasha's hosting, and also to Nourish Melbourne. If you guys are here local to Melbourne, please do go check it out. And then also, please do check out our website as well. There's these links for meditation, which, the essence of being, right? A whole new way of meditating to being rather than doing. A massive invitation to you all. And Natasha, on behalf of myself, the Inspired Evolution audience and tribe, wishing you all the best.
Thank you, Amrit, and you too.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment, and if you want to stay in tune for new episodes launching every Monday, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay inspired to evolve.